y'all, it's Savannah and this is Savannah Says. Today I'm here doing something a little different. I'm going to be talking about all of the series that are on my shelves that I have not completed, that I've started and not completed as of 2022. So this is going to be a two-parter. The first part's going to be books that are on my Kindle and the second part is going to be books that are on my actual shelf. I'm looking at these books and I'm like, I need to have accountability, right? I need to know which series I've started and need to finish because I love series and I will start a book in a series and then just not complete it and forget that it exists. So this way I have been able to go through and see what I have and see what needs to be read, and if there's any suggestions for new things to start, I'll add it to my list. Let's get started. First up, I have The Beautiful by Renee Audier. Now this, when I read this book, it was just one book and now it's like 4 books long, so it was never meant to be a series, I don't think. This is a series about this girl who's in like 1800s Louisiana. I think she's in New Orleans, and it's like vampires. It's got vampires, but they're not explicitly ever called vampires. But I remember reading this and I remember liking it and then just like not caring about the rest of them. I have the first one and I have the second book, and I don't think I'm gonna buy any of the other ones, but I do want to know. The Expanse series by who's this by? James S.A. Corey, which I think is 2 authors just writing as like one. This book actually was good. I didn't finish, but I got like almost through the entire book, and for whatever reason I just stopped. But I do want to read the whole series, and I think the series is like 9 or 10 books, and I have the second one, and now there's a TV show that's been on for years and years, so like obviously I need to know. This series is like a space opera series, and I forget the main character's name, but I know at the beginning they like come across this, I think they come across like a distress signal or something, and it starts like this murder mystery type plot line, but also like a plot line about government corruption, if I'm remembering correctly. There's just a lot of plot twists in this, which I remember liking, so I definitely want to continue this and see where it goes. A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. Now, I talked about this in the 10 books I'll never read video that I just posted. I have tried to read this, I swear to God, like 4 times, and every single time I never get past page like 20, which I think is only like chapter 1, maybe chapter 2, and I only have this one book, and like I've had it for so long, I just feel like at what point am I gonna read it? Like I'm either not gonna read it or I'm gonna read it, and I have not yet decided which pile it's fallen into. As far as I know, this is like a sci-fi fantasy, I think, and like the main character lives in London, but there's like different versions of London that all have to do with magic. There's like a red one, a black one, a white one, and there's another one that I can't remember, and they're like different dimensions, so kind of it's giving multiverse. I'm not exactly sure, but people love this book, and I feel like, yeah, I'm either gonna read the wiki or read the book. Only time will tell. Magnus Chase. This is the 3rd book in the series. I have the first one, I don't know where it is, but I only read the first 2 and then I bought the 3rd one and just like never read it. But obviously I love Rick Riordan. Everybody loves Rick Riordan. Percy Jackson low-key raised me, so I'm obviously going to read this. It's just a matter of finding the first book and actually reading it. And if you didn't know, this is like the Norse mythology from Rick Riordan, so obviously Percy Jackson is like Greek mythology. This is the Norse series, and from what I remember, it's good. There's like a little love interest in here that I was rooting for. Norse mythology is, I think, the one that we just tend to know the least about. I mean, now there's Thor, right? So we kind of know, but like when this came out, we didn't really know. So now I want to know. Every time I say I want to know, take a shot. Game of Thrones, okay? You know, I bought this book when the show first started because this is like the TV version of the cover, and I was trying to read it while I was watching the first season of the show like simultaneously, and the first season of the show was actually like verbatim the book. So to me, I was like, I'd rather watch the show because it's like just more digestible. But I do want to read this, but now I'm scared to read this book because the series is never going to get finished, and I feel like I'm gonna read this and just be pissed off with the rest of the world, but maybe like that's just where I need to be. I don't know. I've not yet determined. Crazy Rich Asians by Kevin Kwong. As you can see, I never finished this book, and I don't think that I ever will. I liked the movie, and I think it's just, we know at this point that the like contemporary romance movies are better for me. I don't even know how to like, if you've seen the movie, it's basically just about like the rich guy, he from Singapore, and he marries this American girl, and he takes her home to visit his family like for his friend's wedding and doesn't tell her that he's rich. And this book was just like not good to me, but maybe I'll finish it. The Darkest Minds by Alexandra Bracken. Now, I read this for the first time when the movie came out because I saw the movie and my sister said the movie was bad because she had read the book, but I never read the book, and I thought the movie was good. So like in hindsight, I don't really like the movie anymore, but this book to me was so good. Like, I don't know what it was. This book is like a YA dystopian about like all the children in the world now have like powers, and they're distinguished, or like they're ranked by color. So like red is the most dangerous and orange is the second level. Then there's like yellow, blue, and green. And like based on your color ranking is like the type of power you have. And the main character is like really OP, and she's got a power that not a lot of people have, or pretty much no one has. And I only read the first 2 books in the series, but I have the first 3, and I do plan on continuing because like I remember giving this book 5 stars, so obviously like I liked it. We've got Blood of Elves, which is the first book in the Witcher series. I never started with the prequel book, even though now like I want to. I only read half of this. I don't remember why I only read half of it. I think like I was just going through something and I just couldn't like deal with reading a book at the moment. So I want to finish this. I have like the first 3, and obviously I loved the show and the video game, so I feel like it's only right that I read the books. But this book is about a guy named Geralt, and he's a witcher, which basically just means he kills monsters. He's like a monster hunter. And if you don't know, I don't really know how to explain it, but it's good. The Kiss of Deception by Mary E. Pearson, which is a part of the Remnant Chronicles, I'm pretty sure. I only ever read half of this, and I don't know why I didn't read the whole thing. It was just not giving in the moment, but people love this book, so I'm like inclined to want to read the rest and know how it goes. From what I can remember, this book is about a girl who is supposed to be married, and she runs away because she doesn't want to be married. I think she's like a princess or something. And like the whole book, she's being hunted by an assassin, I think. And I don't know if it's because she has powers or what. I don't remember the reason why, but the whole book, you don't know who the love interest is. Like either is it the assassin guy or like the actual guy she's supposed to marry who goes looking for her. I don't know. People like this book, and I feel like I should just read them. I have all 3. I should just binge read it and see what it's about. Skullduggery Pleasant by Derek Landy. This is I want to say it's middle grade, but now I know the series is still continuing, and I don't know if it's middle grade anymore, if it's turned into young adult. But this is like a 12-book series that started off as middle grade, and it is about this skeleton detective man named Skullduggery Pleasant. He'd like this girl who her uncle was like involved in like magic or something, and they have to like save the world. And that's all I remember, but I remember the book being good. And obviously because it's middle grade, it just sort of like starts off kind of kiddie, but I know by the end it's like again giving young adult. So I do want to continue the series. We have the Mercy Thompson series by Patricia Briggs. I've pretty much read all of these, but the new one comes out I think this month, so like technically I've not yet completed the series and it's uncompleted. But this is about a woman named Mercy Thompson who is a coyote shifter. She's a coyote shifter. It's like an urban fantasy, paranormal. There is romance, but it's not like romantic in nature. Yeah, these books are good. These books are pretty much a 4-star for me throughout the entire series. So like if you're interested in urban fantasy, I would definitely read these. Foundry Side series by Robert Jackson Bennett. This is a sci-fi fantasy series about a girl named Sanchia, I think is how you say her name. And she basically lives in this world where like you can convince items that they are something else through a method called scriving. And you can convince items to behave a certain way. You can convince anything in the world that's matter to behave in a different way through this power. And I just never finished reading this. This entire summer I've been meaning to read it. Obviously like I restarted the book and just got that far. So like there's no reason I haven't finished reading it. I remember reading this and liking it, but when I was reading it, the second one wasn't out yet. So at this point, they've all been finished, and I no longer have an excuse for why I haven't read this. The Dava Trilogy by S.A. Chakraborty. I read this book, and I liked this book, and I started the second one and just wasn't like in the mood to read, which is why I never finished it. This is a series, I think it's like considered historical fantasy, and it's about this girl whose name I cannot remember, but she ends up like accidentally waking up this djinn. And like she learns that she comes from a long line of like healers. They have like a special power that's pretty much been gone because her family line is like done. Her family line is over. And so she ends up in like Dava, I think is the city they go to, and she learns like the politics and all this, and it's just like magical but also overwhelming, but in a good way. This is a good book, so I just, I think it's making a resurgence on the internet, so I probably should just read it and like give it a review. Maximum Ride by James Patterson. Okay, like I know James Patterson is trash, but Maximum Ride was like middle school me's lifeline. Actually, I might have been in high school, but I've never finished the series, which is why it's on this list. I found this book in my mom's house, and I was like, damn, these books used to be good. It's about like this group of kids, and I think they were like genetically not modified, like experimented on, and like they have wings and stuff. Like I really could not tell you the plot of this book anymore, but it is definitely like YA sci-fi. So if you can overlook James Patterson, I think these books are good. This is the second book in the fall Fallen Kingdom series by Morgan Rhodes. I don't remember what I guess the first book is called Fallen Kingdom. This is a YA fantasy that has been compared to Game of Thrones. I don't know why it's been compared to Game of Thrones. It's like a multi-POV fantasy, and the first book I remember is actually very boring. Like, I hate to say it, if you love the series, I'm sorry. The first book is like dreadfully boring, and like nothing exciting happens until like it's almost over, so it's sort of like a prologue, and I think that is the reason why I just never finished the series. Like, I clearly bought the second book. I don't even have the first one. Yeah, the first book is just really boring, and I've heard the series gets better, but it's like, do I want to commit to that? Like, I mean, normally the first book's either the worst one or one of the better ones, so maybe I will give it a chance. I really couldn't tell you the plot. It's, again, multi-POV. There's like a girl who's supposed to save the world, I think. One girl's like a witch or something. One kid is like, he's gonna become king. Another kid's like poor, and he lives in like the outskirts of the world or something, and he ends up getting involved in a plot. I don't know the plot of this anymore, but we'll see. A Court of Thorn and Roses by Sarah J Maas. Like, technically I have read all of these, and the only one I haven't read is like the newest one about Nesta, but this book is about a girl named Feyre, and she ends up being taken by a fae. I think they're called kings, a fae king, because she basically like commits a crime against him, and he takes her as like repayment. People call this a Beauty and the Beast retelling. I do not consider it to be that. I think that's like the thinnest layer of what this book is about, but it is YA. Actually, it's like YA / adult fantasy romance. This one's probably more YA than the other ones, but for the most part, this book is pretty much adult. They have a lot of sex. They are fae, so if you're into fae, obviously you know that Sarah J Maas wrote the blueprint for the fae romances that are out now. Next up, we have Throne of Glass, also by Sarah J Maas. Like, I have brought this up so many times, but I've never read the last one, so technically it is uncompleted. This is also a new adult, or YA / new adult fantasy romance series. I think the first book is probably the most YA, and it very quickly turns into like adult. But again, there are fae, it's magic. It's about this girl named Selena, and she is like the best assassin of this world, and she ends up, in this book at least, having to prove that she's the best assassin by like competing in this competition for the king. That's all I remember, but this is also another one that people have been like bringing up as like something like on TikTok that they're reading for the first time. So like, it's making a comeback. So Sarah J Maas, again, as much as we dislike her, she pretty much did what no one else was doing, and now every book is following this. Aragon by Christopher Paolini. I think the series is called The Inheritance. It used to be called The Inheritance Trilogy, and when I was first reading them, like in middle school, there was only, the third book had just come out, or like it was coming out, and now there's 4 books, and I never even read the entirety of the third one, so I'm a decade behind at this point. But this is a book about a kid named Aragon, and he's like a part of like this, I don't know if they're extinct or whatever, they're called dragon riders, like a group of people. They have magic and they can control dragons, ride dragons, bond with dragons. I don't really fucking know, but I remember loving this book, and this is probably why as an adult I really like the concept of dragons. But yeah, this is a YA fantasy. I was gonna say sci-fi. It's just a YA fantasy. If you're into dragons, I think that this book is probably gonna be good. But again, it is YA, so like as an adult, just know that. The next thing that's uncompleted is Noughts and Crosses by Mallory Blackman. So in 2020, I came across this TV show. It was called Noughts and Crosses, and I was like, oh, this looks good. It was a BBC show, and the show was good. So I watched the show and realized that it was a book, and I bought all 4 books in the series without having read the first one, and then I read the first one and didn't like it. So now the series is incomplete. So this is a book about, in an alternative universe, Africa took over, or Africa like colonized the world instead of the British, right? So Africa is like a continent colonized the world instead of the British as a single country. So like in England, where this book takes place, Black people are the majority and white people are not. And the rules reflect that, like the societal rules and societal laws and stuff reflect that. And so this book is just like a dystopia version of the reality we live in. And I just personally did not like this book. And I just think that if I had read it when I was like 10 or something, I can see how this was like impactful. But like reading it as a full grown adult, I just didn't like it. And so I never read the other ones, but like people like this book, and so I'm willing to read the other ones. I think the entire series is like a companion series, so like every book is about a different group of characters, but they're all related to the main two of this one. So like, I don't know. Frostblood by Ellie Blake. I don't know what this series is called. I have, again, this is one of those things that I just bought all 3 of the books without having read the first one first, and this is a YA fantasy series about a girl. I don't know if she's got ice magic, fire magic. I don't really know what she has going on, but I do know this book is very boring, and this entire trilogy, from what I can like project and envision, this entire trilogy is not good. It's very bland. If you've ever read a YA fantasy, you have already read this book. So while I don't recommend this, again, the point of this video is to hold myself accountable and to read the shit like on my shelf so I can like get rid of it. So maybe one day I will read it. That day is not today though. Black Sun by Rebecca Rohnhorse. I don't know what this series is called. I have started this book. I didn't finish it. I think I only got like 3 chapters in, and I don't know if that I was in the mood to read it. But this is a adult fantasy, I think, and it is based on Mayan, I don't want to say Mayan mythology, but the blurb says pre-Columbian, so I'm assuming it's definitely mythology of some type, and apparently this book is good. It is a series now, so at this point I'm behind and need to catch up and read it. I can't really give you any more descriptions because I really don't know what the hell it's about, but people love this book. So like, Chronicles of Narnia. Okay, so this obviously is a book from our childhood. We all grew to love this book. I never finished the whole series. I only ever read like, I think I read through the first 4, which is Prince Caspian, then I never continued, but this is a bind up of all 7 of the books, so like I have no excuse anymore. This is a middle grade fantasy about these 4 siblings, and they end up in Narnia. If you don't know what the plot is, that's all I really remember because every book is different and they end up in like a different adventure, but the primary one, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, is like the most popular movie, I think, so definitely want to read this. Pendragon by DJ McHale. So I've had this book since I was like in elementary school, and this is a series. I just never finished the series, so I got the book from my mom's house to like convince myself that I needed to read it again, and I remember really loving this. So this book is about this kid named Bobby, and he realizes that he's like an intergalactic, like, I don't want to say cop, but he's like an intergalactic like police officer or some shit that he's unaware of, and his uncle like tells him about this, and they have to go to like different worlds to stop this villain guy from like destroying these universes. So it's another multiverse type thing, and I remember these books being good, but like, you know, 5th grade me is not like adult me, so it's hard to say in this day and age if it aged well, but like I do want to read it again and read the series to just see like how it ended up. Redwall by Brian Jacques, I think is how you say his name. Again, I read this as a child and I don't remember the plot. I just know that it's about mice or like forest animals or whatever, and they talk and they're having some kind of war or something. And so it's definitely fantasy, and I remember liking this book and I remember reading it multiple times. And I also know by reading reviews like in today's day and age that like people love this book. Like, it's a nostalgic book, so I know it's a series. I don't know how many books are in the series. I do want to continue though. Grave Mercy by Robin Lefevers. This is a series, and I think that every book in the series is following a different character, which is why I never finished, because I liked the character in this one and I didn't really care for like the other people. But from what I remember, this book is about a girl who, yes, she is like a child of death. So she's been blessed by the god of death, and she has like powers, I think, like she can kill people or something. I don't really fucking remember, but I remember this book was good, and it's set in like ye old France, I think. So she's like going undercover to help this guy with like this political plot. That's a terrible description, but this book is good. Outlander by Diana Gabaldon. So I recently started watching this show again, and I bought this book when the show first came out, so like 2015 or whatever, because I was like, oh, I'll watch a TV show, but I want to read the book first. And as we can see, I never finished the book. I got pretty decent into it. I got 500 pages, well, 450 pages into it. It's only like a 650 page book, so I clearly was almost done, but I guess whatever about it just didn't like click with me. So like, I have no excuse. I need to finish this. You know, it's about a woman named Claire, and she ends up back in time in like 1600s Scotland, I think, and she ends up with this guy Jamie, and they end up getting married, and then she ends up like back in the future with her husband. I don't fucking know. The theme song for the show was good though, and I know that women women love this book. It is very much giving mom lit. So for that reason alone, I feel like I want to know. And lastly, for the physical books that I have that are series that I have not yet completed, we have Keeper of the Lost Cities by Shannon Messenger. This is a middle grade fantasy about this girl who's like a fairy or something, and she ends up like realizing that she was adopted, I think, as she like ends up in the fairy world and has to like discover her magic or something. I'm not exactly clear because I read this book like 2 years. Well, okay, 2020 was not last year, so really it was like, what, 3 years ago that I read this book, and I remember liking it, but like I bought the first fucking 5 of them and never continued, so obviously I need to finish. That has been a running pattern with me. I just buy things and don't finish them, but you know, I'm here to hold myself accountable. And so yeah, that's all I have for you today. Make sure you like and subscribe, comment below, tell me if there's any books that you've read from this list that you thought the series was good, if you're interested in any of these series, if there is a series that you think I should start based on the things that I've talked about today. Stay tuned for part 2, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye.